poets and writers, I'm Case Spivey, and I think you've probably noticed the kind of clickbaity title because I wanted to weigh in on something that's been kind of controversial that a lot of people have been talking about, and I just keep seeing it come up, and I felt like I wanted to talk about it. The thing is, I feel like people are conflating like two different ideas when they talk about the fact that you just don't make a lot of money publishing books. Most people don't make a lot of money publishing books. People feel very attacked about that. And now you get two sides of the story. You get people who are in the industry, have published, and are saying, hey, have realistic expectations. And then you also have people who aren't in the industry and are saying, hey, you should let us dream. Like, we should be able to expect to get paid a living wage for the job, for the work that we want to do. And then you have the outliers, the people who made hella bank publishing books, and then you're like, well, can't we aspire to be like that? And of course you can. And I think that's the thing we all need to come back to. Like, of course you can aspire to be anything. I keep seeing people making videos or talking, and especially with like Publishing Paid Me, it really came out where people were like, hey, manage your expectations. Here's the reality of the industry you want to go into. And a lot of people feeling very attacked about that. And you're feeling attacked for a very good reason, and the reason is you probably were attacked. Probably at some point in your life somebody told you that you won't be able to make money publishing, that your writing maybe even isn't good enough, that you're not a good enough writer. Someone probably did attack you, and like Francina Simone said about a totally different subject, hurt people hurt people. So when you feel really attacked by someone saying, hey, manage your expectations, you're not going to be able to make a living off your writing, you want to fight back and be like, hey, I could make a living off of my writing. And you know what? The fact is you can. And these people who are saying that you should manage your expectations, they're not saying it's impossible for you. Like, of course it happens. There are plenty of people who it does happen to, but at the same time, if you were to go out there and sell one book and then expect that you can quit your day job and support your family, you're gonna end up poor and homeless. Like, then you get articles, when was it? Just a couple months ago. This year is going really weird, so it could have been a whole year ago at this point and I wouldn't know, or it could have been last month. I don't think it was. I feel like it was before March. But you got that article, okay, Zuko. You can't just walk across the camera constantly. You had a person publish an article about how, oh, publishing didn't tell them that they were going to, you know, have all these problems, all these money problems after publishing, like that their expectations were not managed. And so people were like, hey, go into it managing your expectations. Know you're gonna have to pay your own taxes. Know that you're not gonna have money coming in. This isn't the kind of job, like if you're going into writing as your career, this is not the kind of job where you get a monthly paycheck and you know how much it's going to be and how much is taken out for taxes. Like, this is not the career path that you're in. And I want to talk specifically to poets here for a second. If you're going into poetry for money, you're being dumb. And that's not, I'm not saying that to attack you, and it sounds like I am, and I get that. And if you're feeling attacked, go ahead and feel your feelings, but like, listen to me here. Poetry is not an industry that makes money, and you can see that in the way that publishers handle it, in the way that agents handle it, which is not at all. You don't get agents for poetry because they are not going to get a return on any of the investment. It has always been rare for poets to sell 1,000 copies of their poetry book. 1,000 copies. It is way more typical for like a good poetry sale to be under 200 copies. That's just the reality, and obviously there are outliers. And so I thought I'd talk about the outliers to kind of help manage your expectations and to sort of give you an idea, like, this is an industry that is hard to get into. And I am going to link some videos below. I believe both Lexa Dunn and LaSalle Sambury talk about specifically their experience with publishing and how, with traditional publishing, I'm going to go into different kinds because there's a whole bunch of different industries. There's traditional novel writing, there's traditional poetry writing, there's indie novel writing, and there's indie poetry writing. And these are all different types of ways that you can publish. And there's not a lot of cash flow in all of them. And there's very, very little cash flow in some of them. And so I want to kind of talk about a lot of this. So try and stick with me here. But both Alexa Dunn and LaSalle Sandbury, I'm going to link their videos below where they talk about their advances and royalties and kind of what the industry was like for them, to give you an idea. And they are both traditionally published authors. To give you a really good idea for poetry, because my channel, I love poetry, I write poetry, I've been publishing poetry for a while now, and obviously I'm not wildly successful. But there aren't terribly many poets who are wildly successful. Think about poets right now who you can think of off the top of your head who have been very successful. I'm thinking people who are like moving a lot of copies of books, like Ocean Vuong, like Rupi Kaur, like Amanda Lovelace, are like the top ones that come off my head. Kaveh Akbar, whose book I just read, finally. And this is kind of a new trend. And it's a small selection. Oh, R.L. Sin is another one that is moving a lot of copies of poetry books. This is a very recent development, and I want to talk specifically about Rupi Kaur first, because she is indie published poet initially. Now, of course, she's one of the best known poets in the world right now, and so now she's getting published by professional publishers. Traditional publishers. But when she started, she already, before publishing her collection, Milk and Honey probably has sold more poetry book copies than anything else in the world. Like, I forgot to look up that stat particularly. I looked up a bunch of stats for this, but I didn't look up that one for some reason. But when it came out, the demand for it was so high, it was always going to sell more copies. And the demand for it was so high because all of the backing for that came from her Instagram account. Like, she's where the term Insta poets come from. She was wildly successful on Instagram and had lots of people requesting the book ahead of time. So she was never like in any kind of danger publishing her book that people wouldn't buy it. She already had the audience. She already had the people lined up to buy the book. There was no risk involved for her. Most of the time for poetry, you're not going to be in that category. Most of the time, poets start out either publishing and then getting onto a reading aloud circuit. There are spoken word competitions, there are just poetry readings, poetry houses around the world where you can go do readings. There's a lot of places where you can kind of get your name out that way, or online you can start an Instagram, and most poets start going that way. You either publish the book first and then perform it, or present it in some way, or you present in some way and then publish the book. And these are small crowds. Poetry does not sell out stadiums still. Too bad. Like, I'm sure even Rupi Kaur would have trouble filling, 200 seats. It's just the reality of the situation. Like, it does happen. I'm sure it happens occasionally. It's just not something that's often happening. Rupi Kaur, I looked up her net worth, and I'm going to talk about net worths for some of these really, really top selling poets and writers for you. Again, to help manage your expectations, to let you know, like, this is the top people that I could think of right now. Like, people who are definitely well known, definitely selling a lot, to give you an idea of what the high end is making, so that you can look at what your expectation is and why people are telling you not to quit your day job, that like you're probably not going to make a lot. Rupi Kaur's net worth, and okay, net worth also is something where it's a little vague, and let's just be honest, if you look up net worth just on Google, if they don't really know what the person's net worth is, if this isn't something that has been researched and published somewhere, they'll tend to be like, well, they must be making a lot of money, so we'll give them $1 million. You'll find a lot of people, they have a range from like it's somewhere in $1 million. Anytime it says $1 million, they don't really know how much they're making. They just assume it's a good amount. But net worth also is everything. It's like if they sold their brand, if they sold all their assets, like if they sold everything that is them as a person. Like if Rupi Kaur sold the name Rupi Kaur and all of her book rights or something, they're estimating her net worth in that case would be about $1 million. Again, they don't know. About $1 million for one of the top poets in the world. And I looked up some others, and other poets who fall into this category of the, oh, they must be making at least $1 million net worth. Billy Collins, who has been a poet laureate and pretty well known. I think if you're within the poetry community, you probably have an opinion on Billy Collins. I've talked about him in many other videos. And another favorite of mine, Rita Dove, also falls into that same category of the, they must be making about $1 million. These are people who are moving a lot of copies of books, who have several collections out, who are very well known. Rita Dove has also been poet laureate. Like, these are big names. And that's in traditional publishing. Now, most of the poets are making most of their money, though, from doing talks and things, like going to schools, going to conventions and things, and giving poet talks. The word just flashed out of my mind. Residencies. That's it. Residencies. Doing residencies, like making money, doing those kinds of things. Now, also, if you've ever looked up residency contests, there are some that are more and there are some that are less. Like, I have seen ones for like $25,000, and then also you like live on the campus. That's pretty good. But a lot of them are like $10,000, and then you live on the campus for like a semester or something. And I was just thinking, like, if all the money I made was from like a residency, $10,000 is a lot of money. Like, it would help me out a lot right now. Like, let's be real. But also, $10,000 is not enough to live on in a year. Like, that's not a lot of money to pay all of your expenses in a year. So, like, in terms of poetry, that's like what would be considered like a pretty big award, to get like a $10,000 residency somewhere and have your room and board paid for there or something. But like, realistically, that's not equivalent of a living wage. You see what I'm saying with that? Okay. Also looked up someone else who is very well known, and that is Maya Angelou. And she is estimated to be net worth of $10 million. She was the highest poet I could find. Like, let me know if you can find somebody who is worth more than that. But she also has like quite a backlog of things. She's a very well-known poet. So they're estimating about $10 million as her net worth. Pretty good for traditionally published. Yeah, but most of their money is still getting made off of like going and doing things, like working for their money. It's not just coming in off of their books. They're probably making a very small percentage of that net worth from just straight up book sales alone. Let's talk about what traditional authors are making. Now, if you look up the top authors in the world, obviously, let's just get one of the big outliers out there. J.K. Rowling is still net worth $1 billion. $1 million? Down there. $1 billion is over here. Like, that's a huge gap. Like, 3 extra zeros is a big amount of money, you guys. Other really well-known big writers, and remember, we said Maya Angelou, one of the top poets out there, $10 million. Stephen King is making $400 million. James Patterson is at $800 million. But let's talk about someone else. Someone who I absolutely love, but is maybe not in the like, oh my god, thousands of books, super mega fame. Laini Taylor, I also looked up. The author of Strange the Dreamer. And she's estimated in the 1 million range, which means they don't really know what she's making. But a very good, well-known writer. Someone who is talked about all over BookTube. Someone who's doing quite well for herself, is making a living off of her writing. Has a very well-known series, multiple books out. Manage your expectations. She's doing very, very, very well for a writer, and she's not touching those top-end people. And she's also really well known, really popular, really insanely good writer. And then let's talk about indie publishing, because I feel like this is the platform we're on. Indie publishing is kind of what we're all interested in. Like, it's what a lot of people are doing online, and you have some people who are doing it really, really well. And I want to talk about 2 in particular who probably, if you're on AuthorTube, you've heard about them. And they are the Courtney Project, where Courtney is part of the duo Kennedy Fox, who's a pretty popular USA Today best-selling romance novelist, and they put out novels like at an insane speed. They are putting out, I mean, they have like 30 plus novels under their belt as a duo, and she's making really good money. in indie publishing, her with another person. She has the support, and it's in a very popular genre. Romance is the kind of genre where they have like voracious readers, loyal audiences. They go through a lot of books. It's an industry where traditionally you can really move copies. Like, you can make good money in romance, and that has always been something really digestible like that and really popular. Romance is a category that is bringing in the money. She's doing quite well and is making money as a full-time writer. Another one is Jenna Morassi, whose novel The Savior's Champion did quite well. She has talked about now she's, you know, being a writer is kind of her main profession, but the difference here is being a YouTuber is really her main profession. Like, she grew quite quickly in the YouTube community and was really able to move into being a writer full-time because of her YouTube channel being really popular. And I don't think she would disagree with that. But I also want to talk about something else that these two women have in common. Like, they write in different genres, they start in different paths, they came at this from different angles. Jenna Morassi really, like, YouTube became kind of the thing that allowed her to publish, to be a writer full-time. For Courtney, their books doing so well was what allowed her to be a writer full-time. But the thing they have in common is they both come from business backgrounds. I believe they were both in accounting. If I'm not mistaken, they were both, so they're numbers women. They're women who know business quite well. They're very good at managing themselves, managing their finances, managing their sales, what's coming in, how much I need to put back out. They're really good at that kind of back and forth with money. Most of us are not, and you need to be realistic with yourself if you're going into indie publishing. And this is one of the #1 things that people, I think, forget about. If you're in charge of all of your money, you gotta do that. A lot of people who aren't good at that, even if you're with a traditional publisher, and let's say you're making 6 digits. Let's say you're making 6 digits and they're coming in. Well, if you don't know how to reasonably manage that kind of money and to put back out into your marketing or whatever a reasonable amount, how to pay your taxes correctly so you're not owing a whole lot or getting audited, like, if you're not good at that kind of thing and you're not hiring someone who is good at that, and it's not something that just comes with the job, which it does not come with the job in writing in any of these fields. It is not something that is written into the job as someone who helps you with these things. If you're not already good at those things, you could just blow that 6-figure advance and not be able to do anything with it. But someone who is very good at money, who has an accounting background, could probably do quite well with like a 4-figure advance. So again, like, there's a reason these women are doing so well. They're very, very good in the business side of things. And you need to look at that in like a serious way. Like, I don't think we talk enough about how there's a part of writing that is creative, and you can thrive there. It can happen. Absolutely it can. And it is more rare. And if you're on the side where you are excellent at business, no matter what field you're in, that business sense is going to give you an edge. And we really don't talk about that a lot. I think actually Alexa Dunn might talk about it. I have a hair on my lip. Alexa Dunn might talk about it a little bit, that like that was something she knew she wasn't as good at, and it's why she didn't want to go into indie publishing at all. But it's also a reason why she kept her day job, because then you get a standard paycheck and you don't have to worry about, oh, my advance is everything and it needs to be like sectioned off for the year and I need to like be mapping out my quarters and how the money is going to affect various things. It can be done. And you know what? If you are the type of person who has a very, very good, and don't just think you do, know you do before going into it, a very, very good business sense and a very good mind for numbers, and you like keeping spreadsheets, and you keep your spreadsheets accurately every time, you might be able to make a living off of writing books. Even if you're just like putting out 1 book a year and it's not doing that hot, maybe only selling a couple thousand copies or something, you might be able to. Like, I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm saying most people can't do that. And you can't expect that you're going to get even a 5-figure deal. And I think that was something that publishing made me really brought to light, was a lot of people don't get high advances. And you might get a low advance and not expect to see any royalties. And then you don't have a paycheck. You kind of see, and if you're doing poetry, you are not going to get an advance. That would be a very rare circumstance in the poetry industry for you to get an advance. And if you're seeing royalties, you're doing very well. Most of the time, they're gonna hand you a stack of books, be like, great, we published you. Should you sell all of these? Ask us for more. And you're going to be moving copies yourself. Most of the time, poets move copies themselves. That's the reason that they get on these circuits and that they're performing and that they're selling and doing readings where they're going face to face and person to person selling individual copies. Novelists do this too, but people go and pick up novels in bookstores and give them a chance much more often, extremely higher frequency. Think about a bookstore and think about the poetry section. And if your bookstore has a bigger poetry section than maybe like one skinny shelf or maybe 2 skinny shelves, usually one of them is going to be like Shakespeare and then a few other things. If your bookstore has more poetry section than that, you have a very poetry-oriented bookstore. Like, that's great. Good for you. Like, I'm so proud of you. I'd love to visit your bookstore. Most bookstores have like one shelf of poetry. So there's already not a lot of selection there. Like, you're not going to see a lot of new poets. And let's like, okay, I know you're all going to be like, but what about the store in Portland? Shut up about that. Okay, they're the one exception. They're doing real well. Most bookstores don't have that. And so most people who don't have access to these kind of like trendy, cool bookstores that are like massive, sprawling, and like known for their indie material that is there, like for having these big poetry sections, most bookstores have like one. And so that's what most people are seeing when they go into a bookstore. Even if they're looking for poetry, you know, you might go in and you can't even find an Ocean Vuong book. You can't find anything but Rupi Kaur and some like old people like Emily Dickinson, who is already dead, you know? That's what people are seeing directly. And they do that because people aren't buying those books. People aren't going in there and being like, oh, I'm going to try this new poetry book. It doesn't happen as often. Whereas new releases come in for novels and people are like, yeah, I'll give that a chance. I'm feeling in the mood for a light summer romance. I'm gonna pick that up. I'm feeling in the mood for something new in fantasy. I'm just gonna choose a book at random. Like, that happens more often than it does with poetry. You don't sell things on more than just like a one-to-one basis. People buy poetry from you because they know who you are and that they like your poetry and they like to read poetry. Think how narrow of a gap there is. How many people have already read your poetry, already like your poetry, and are wanting to buy a book right now, and they want to spend that money on you. That's who's buying your poetry. And it's always going to be a low number. And you just have more luck as a novelist. It's just the way the industry works right now. Poets don't make hardly any money, and you do deserve the money. You deserve to be making money off of your art. You do deserve it. But that is not how the industry is right now. And yes, we should try and change it and we should speak out, but you shouldn't feel attacked by people who are trying to protect you from the reality that you're not going to move copies. Like, your poetry book could be stunning and you're not going to move that many copies, not just from you having the book out there in the world. It's not going to happen, unfortunately. Yes, you should try. Absolutely, you should try. You should put your best work out there and market it enthusiastically, and you may be one of the lucky ones, and you may be one of the smart ones who's just able to like hit the market dead on, and you just have that sense. But when people are saying, hey, be realistic about this, like, this realistically doesn't happen very often, understand that they're saying it from a place of love. They're not saying it from a place of like, you're a bad writer, you're never going to be able to do this. Like, they too have been hurt, and they'd really rather you protected yourself and went into this industry in a way that is going to protect you and give you the best chance long term. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. My battery is already dying because I forgot to charge the camera. I hope you found this helpful. I'm going to put some resources down below so you can kind of get some other people's takes on this as well. And thank you so much for watching. And you know what? Good luck to all of us. Good luck to you. Do your best. Like, your writing is worth it. It's worth getting paid a living wage for. It's just not the industry that we're in. It's not a realistic thing that's going to definitely happen. So do your best and try to be one of the outliers, but have a backup plan, because this can't be the thing that you're hoping is gonna like save you from whatever situation you're in. And that's what I have to say about that. I'll talk to you again soon. Bye.